And right now, KT McFarland, Fox News national security analyst, joins us. You can follow her on Twitter, of course, at KT McFarland. Great to have you, KT.
It's a pleasure.
I want to turn to the shootings in Texas. ISIS is claiming responsibility. There's not a lot of evidence to support that, although it's certainly there that these guys who perpetrated this crime, who ended up dying in their attempt to disrupt this First Amendment exercise, they certainly pledged allegiance in their own right to ISIS. Is this something we should be worried about?
Yeah, I think it's a growth industry. Whether these are people who ISIS actively recruited, actively trained, actively told how to go about doing a terrorist action, or whether they're just people who are searching around on the internet wanting to get in a little trouble. Ooh, I'm inspired by ISIS. Maybe that's something I'd like to do. You know, it'll be the whole range. The crucial thing for us, though, is this is a whole new form of terrorism. This is not guys from the Middle East who are coming here trying to get into America and blow up the Twin Towers. This is local Americans. They're passport-carrying Americans or visa-carrying Americans. They can move freely around the United States, and they are the enemy within. Are we defenseless against them? Absolutely not. That's why it's so important that we use a lot of this new data mining technology and software that's been developed in the last year or two to track these people, to see before they, who's an element of interest, who's somebody that we want to take a second look at. Because so far in the war on terror, we have looked at everybody the same. We have treated all 350 million Americans the same way. It's important now to take our resources. We now have the capability to ferret out who are the 1% who are potentially going to be sympathetic to and might go operational in terrorist incident, and take a really close look at that.
KT, to that end, because a lot of people say, we were following these guys, you just said ferret them out. I mean, to that end, is it in a way sort of a good thing that Pamela Geller and her group did this sort of thing? A lot of people are saying, hey, it brought these guys out of the woodwork.
There are a lot more like this. I think that it's important that Pamela Geller and her group did this, whether you find it, if you're in sympathy with what they said, or whether you find it distasteful. They have the First Amendment right to say stuff. And the First Amendment is there not to protect the right of free speech to people we all agree with. It's to provide the right of free speech to people we disagree with, and that's the importance of this. It's, we've now had political correctness run amok. We can't say anything for fear of insulting this group or somehow disrespecting that group. The First Amendment says you can say anything you want except fire in a crowded theater, and this is not fire in a crowded theater.
All right, you talk about ISIS and is there a threat in the homeland? Mm-hmm. They have gone on the web and claimed that they have 71 trained soldiers across 15 states, and they have vowed to kill Pamela Geller. And they say, by the way, just for people here locally, they're going to name some of the states where they have these soldiers who are ready to do their bidding. Among them are Virginia, Maryland, Illinois, California, and Michigan. Do we take this kind of stuff seriously, or is it bravado?
Oh, you have to take it seriously, and it probably is a little bit of bravado. But thank you for naming those states. Let's take a closer look. Every time there's a terrorist incident, guys, we look back afterwards and we say, there was so much evidence if we had only connected the dots.
Yeah, I know. That's right.
We need to connect the dots before, and we now have the technology to do it. We have data mining technologies which can find anomalies, so that stuff that you and I might pay no attention to, if you add enough of those little hints together, you've all of a sudden come up with a profile of an individual that you want to pay closer attention to. You don't round them up, you don't arrest them, but you want to know what they're up to and when they're going to, potentially, when they go operational. I once, a couple of years ago, was with the American head of MI5, and he said, in Great Britain, there are about 2,000 or so that we are constantly monitoring, because we know that they've talked about it, we've seen in social media that they've bragged that they're going to do attacks, we know that they're consorting with people who have done attacks. We're watching them, and we're waiting to see if they might go operational. And when they cross over, that's when we're going to get them. We're going to get them before they commit the act, but when they've gotten the act in place.
Carly Fiorina was on Seth Meyers' show and had this to say about Vladimir Putin.
I think Vladimir Putin's a bad dude, and I think there are things we need to do to push back on him.
He is a dear
friend of yours. Okay, well, sorry.
I'm not only because he's been a great guest on this show multiple times.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, having met Vladimir Putin, he actually is quite funny. You might try.
Really?
Yeah.
He's funny, but a bad dude, and a bad dude has just unveiled a brand new tank that they're showing off. What do you think about that?
Yeah, why do they need a new tank?
Yeah, what would they need a new tank for?
Isn't that just for rolling into other countries?
See you with, my dear,
exactly.
because they want to use that new tank potentially in Ukraine and along the Russian border in former lands that were theirs. You know, is he a bad dude? You bet he's a bad dude. Is he a bully? Sure, he's a bully. How do you deal with a bully? You knock the knees out from underneath him. How do you do that? You don't go fight a bully. You stand up to the bully. Vladimir Putin's greatest weakness, Russia's greatest weakness, are two things. One, they have a cyber wall around their population so that their people don't get news from the outside world.
Right.
They get the news they're fed. Tear down that cyber wall. Let them see what the rest of the world is doing. And number two, they have a huge economic vulnerability. The only thing Russia exports is oil and natural gas, and the price of both of those has plummeted. Pressure their economy to the breaking point, tear down the cyber wall, and then the Russian people do the rest on their own. That's how we won the Cold War.
Well, you know, you heard Carly there, Carly Fiorina, who just announced for president on Monday. I think people will be surprised to learn that she has met with Vladimir Putin. She has actually met, as she put it, with about as many foreign leaders as any other candidate, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton. I would say, Katie McFarland, she probably had more effective meetings with those foreign leaders than Hillary Clinton ever did. How do you size her, and now that we have a growing field, how do you size up the other candidates with regard to national security?
Well, I think it's terrific that the Republican Party has so many people who want to throw their hat in the ring. Why? Because it's going to ensure a real debate on the issues, on the substance. You can't, if there are 20 people in the ring, you can't just fake it with a lot of bromides and sort of pablum speeches. You got to start getting specific about the policies. And as far as Carly Fiorina, you know, people say, well, she's just really running for vice president, or, well, it's just because she's a woman. Are you kidding? If there were a man who wanted to run for president, who had been the head of a Fortune 20, the largest technology company in the world, we would be jumping up and down cheering him on. So the fact that Carly says, yeah, I've met with Vladimir Putin, I've met with King Abdullah, I've met him face-to-face, she was in meetings with them when they wanted her business.
Right.
When she was head of HP, the largest technology company in the world. They wanted to do business with her, and she cut some pretty tough contracts with them.
She was pretty tough with them, wasn't she? That's my understanding as well.
She's not a wimp, and anybody who thinks that a woman, just because, I mean, if somebody asked her...
I sense that you're saying there's some sexism here directed at Carly Fiorina that isn't there with Hillary Clinton.
What do you mean, that I'm in favor of her because she's a woman?
No, that you're saying she's being criticized and, they're writing her off because she's a woman, and people don't write off Hillary.
Just the opposite. Hillary Clinton's biggest claim to fame, the thing that she's going to run on, is the fact that she has 2 X chromosomes.
Where Carly doesn't make that statement very often. No. It's just an incidental thing.
Well, listen, always a pleasure to have you, KT. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, KT.